The warship was massive. It stretched across the dark sky like a metal mountain, blocking the stars and the light of the distant sun. The ship was called the Iron Fang, and it belonged to the Empire. They were a race of tall, powerful reptilian creatures. They had conquered many worlds. They had destroyed many civilizations. And now they had taken the human colony of Nu. Deep inside the Iron Fang, in the cold darkness of the prison level, Captain Park was on her knees. Heavy metal chains wrapped around her wrists. Blood dripped from a cut above her eye. Her uniform was torn and dirty. She had not eaten in 2 days. She had not slept in 3. But she was not broken. Was 34 years old. She had short black hair and sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. Before the war, she had been a cargo ship pilot. She had never wanted to be a soldier. But when they started burning human colonies one by one, she had picked up a weapon like everyone else. She had fought for 6 months. She had saved hundreds of lives. And when Nu finally fell, she was the last officer standing. Now she was a prisoner. The cell door opened with a loud metal sound. Did not look up. She already knew who was coming. She could hear the heavy footsteps, the click of claws on the metal floor. She could smell the strange, sharp scent that all carried with them. Commander walked into the cell. He was tall, almost 3 meters high. His scales were the color of dark copper, and his eyes were yellow with black slits in the center. He wore the black armor of a war commander, decorated with the bones of enemies he had killed. Had conquered 11 worlds. He had killed thousands. To him, humans were just another weak species waiting to be crushed. He stopped in front of and looked down at her with cold amusement. "The famous Captain Park," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "The humans called you a hero. They said you saved many lives during the battle." Said nothing. Continued walking around her, his tail sweeping slowly behind him. "I watched the recordings of the final battle. You fought well for a human. You killed 17 of my soldiers before we captured you." Still remained silent. Stopped in front of her again. "Do you know why you are still alive, human?" Finally looked up. Her one good eye met his cold gaze. "Because you want something from me." His mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. "Smart, yes, I want answers." He leaned closer, his breath hot and unpleasant on her face. 3 months ago, one of our transport ships crashed near your colony. There were cubs on that ship. Children, 12 of them. His expression did not change, but inside, her heart began to beat faster. "My soldiers recovered those cubs when we took your colony," continued. "They were healthy, well-fed. Some of them even cried when they were taken from your people." His voice grew harder. "They cried for humans. They called out names, human names." He grabbed his chin and forced her to look directly at him. "What did you do to them?" Pulled her face away from his grip. "We did nothing to them." "Lies," roared. The sound echoed through the small cell. "Cubs do not cry for enemies. They do not learn enemy languages. They do not ask for enemy food." He began packing again, his claws scratching the floor with each step. "One of the cubs was sick when we found them. Our doctors examined him. They found human medicine in his blood. Human medicine. You treated our young with your weak, primitive medicine." "The cub was dying," said quietly. "The medicine saved his life." Spun around. Why would you save an enemy's child?" "Because he was a child." The answer seemed to confuse. He stood still for a long moment, his yellow eyes blinking slowly. In culture, captured young were either killed immediately or raised as slaves. The idea of simply caring for them and then returning them made no sense to him. "You are lying," he said finally. "You did something to their minds. You filled them with weakness, with kindness," finished. Hissed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Kindness is weakness. Kindness is for prey animals, not warriors." "Then why are you so afraid of it?" The question hung in the air between them. His tail lashed angrily, knocking against the wall. For a moment, thought he might kill her right there. But then he stepped back, forcing his rage under control. "The cubs will be cleansed," he said coldly. "Whatever poison you put in their minds, it will be burned out. They will become proper warriors, and they will forget everything about their time with humans." Shook her head slowly. "You can't make them forget. They were with us for 3 months. They lived with us. They played with our children. They learned our songs, our stories, our games. They learned that not everyone in the universe wants to hurt them." "Enough," struck her across the face with the back of his clawed hand, fell sideways, tasting blood in her mouth. "You will tell me exactly what was done to those cubs, every detail, every person who had contact with them." Pushed herself back up to her knees. Blood ran from her split lip, but she was still smiling. It was a sad, tired smile, but it was real. "There was one person," she said, "one human who spent the most time with them. He taught them everything. He was their teacher, their caretaker, their friend. The cubs called him Warm Voice. In our language, that would be like a father who is not a father, someone who protects children that are not his own." His eyes narrowed. "Where is this human? I will question him myself." Smile faded. Something dark and painful moved across her face. "He's dead," she said quietly. "Your soldiers killed him during the invasion. He died protecting a group of children who were trying to reach the evacuation ships." She looked up and now there was fire in her eyes. "Some of those children were. 3 of the cubs refused to leave when your ships arrived. They wanted to stay with him, with us, and he died trying to protect them along with the human children." Was silent. This information did not match anything he understood about war, about enemies, about the nature of the universe. "You're lying," he said, but his voice was less certain now. "I'm not." His voice was steady. His name was Lee. He was a teacher. He believed that kindness was never wasted, even on enemies, even on the children of the people who wanted to kill us. He used to say that children don't choose their parents and they don't choose wars. They're just children. Turned away abruptly. He walked to the door of the cell and stopped. "Tomorrow," he said without looking back, "you will be executed, and the cubs will be the ones to kill you. They will prove that they are true, and this weakness you planted in them will die with you." The door closed behind him with a heavy clang. Sat alone in the darkness. She thought about his gentle smile and his endless patience. She thought about the cubs, about how scared they had been at first, and how they had slowly learned to trust. She thought about tomorrow. And despite everything, she found herself hoping that had been right. That kindness was never truly wasted. That somewhere, somehow, the seeds he had planted would grow into something beautiful. Even if she would not live to see it. 3 months before the fall of New, the sky was blue and the air smelled like the ocean. The colony was peaceful. Children played in the streets. Farmers worked in the fields. Nobody knew that war was coming. Lee was walking home from the school where he worked. He was 41 years old, with gentle eyes and hair that was starting to turn at the sides. He walked slowly, enjoying the warm afternoon sun. He was thinking about dinner, about the book he was reading, about the simple pleasures of a quiet life. Then the siren started. Everyone in the colony knew what the sirens meant. Enemy ships, possible attack, take shelter immediately. But did not run to the shelter. He saw something falling from the sky, trailing smoke and fire. It was not a bomb. It was a ship, a small one spinning out of control. It crashed into the hills just outside the colony, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. Started running toward the crash. Other people ran away toward the shelters. They shouted at him to come back, but kept running. He was not a brave man by nature. He had never been in a fight in his life, but something told him that he needed to see what was in that ship. When he reached the crash site, he found the wreckage of a small transport vessel. It had broken apart on impact, scattering metal and strange alien equipment across the hillside. Smoke rose from the ruins. Small fires burned here and there. And then heard the crying. It was not human crying. The sound was different, higher and more sharp. but it was still crying. It was still the sound of fear and pain. He climbed into the wreckage, cutting his hands on broken metal, coughing from the smoke. And there, huddled together in what had been the cargo area, he found them. 12 cubs. They were small, barely reaching his waist. Their scales were pale with fear and their eyes were wide and wet with tears. Some of them were hurt. All of them were terrified. When they saw, they hissed and snapped, trying to protect each other even though they were just children. Stopped, he held up his hands, showing them he had no weapons. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cubs did not understand his words. They pressed closer together, the bigger ones trying to shield the smaller ones. One of them, a cub with dark green scales, made a threatening sound and raised his small claws. Sat down on the ground. He moved slowly, carefully, making himself seem as small and unthreatening as possible. This was what he had learned in his years of working with scared children. Fear made everyone the same, human or alien. The solution was always patience. He started to hum a song. It was a simple melody, a lullaby that his mother had sung to him when he was a child. He did not try to approach the cubs. He just sat there, humming softly, waiting. It took a long time. The fires burned lower. The smoke began to clear. And slowly, very slowly, the cubs stopped hissing. Their scales began to return to their normal colors. One of the smaller cubs, curiosity winning over fear, took a tiny step toward. When the rescue teams arrived an hour later, they found sitting in the wreckage, surrounded by 12 cubs who had fallen asleep around him like a pile of strange, scaly puppies. The military wanted to take the cubs immediately. Colonel, the colony's defense commander, argued that they should be held as prisoners of war. They could be used as bargaining chips. They could be used to force the to negotiate. Governor was not sure what to do. She was a practical woman, a politician who had managed the colony for 15 years. She understood the value of leverage in war, but she also understood that keeping alien children as prisoners would change who they were as a people. Spoke at the emergency meeting. "They're children," he said simply. "They're scared. They just watched their ship crash. They probably watched the adults on that ship die. They don't know where they are or what's going to happen to them. If we throw them in a prison cell, we become the monsters they already think we are." Colonel shook her head. "They're enemy aliens. Their parents are probably the ones commanding the ships that want to kill us all." "Their parents' choices are not their choices," replied. "They didn't ask to be born, they didn't ask for this war. They're just children." Governor looked at him for a long moment. "What do you suggest we do with them?" "Let me take care of them," said. "Let me teach them. Let me show them that humans are not the monsters their leaders tell them we are. And when the time comes, we send them back, healthy, safe. We show them that we are better than they think we are." "That's naive," Colonel said. "War is not won with kindness." Smiled sadly. "Maybe not, but some things are more important than winning." The vote was close, but Governor sided with. The cubs would stay with him in a special facility near the school. They would be treated as guests, not prisoners. The first weeks were hard. The cubs did not trust. They did not trust any human. They expected to be tortured, to be starved, to be used as slaves. That was how the treated captured children. That was the only reality they knew. But day after day proved them wrong. He learned their language, studying late into the night, making mistakes, trying again. He learned their names. The cub with dark green scales was called. The smallest one, a female with bright blue patterns on her face, was called. There was Anne and Tally and 7 others, each with their own personality, their own fears, their own dreams. He learned what they liked to eat. Were carnivores, but they loved sweet fruits. Traded with farmers across the colony to get the sweetest fruits he could find. He learned that they loved music, especially drums and deep, rhythmic sounds. He brought musicians to play for them. He told them stories. Human stories about heroes and adventures, about kindness and courage. He told them about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about the millions of different creatures that lived there. The cubs listened with wide eyes, fascinated by this strange, distant world. When got sick with a lung infection, stayed by his side for 3 days and 3 nights. Human medicine was not designed for bodies, but worked with the colony's doctors to find a treatment that would work. He held Claude's hand through the fever, singing soft songs, telling him stories, promising him that everything would be okay. When's fever finally broke, he looked up at with something new in his eyes. It was not fear. It was not suspicion. It was trust. Warm voice said. His accent was heavy, but the words were clear. Did not understand at first. He asked, who had learned the most human language. It is a great honor, explained. It is what we call someone who protects young that are not their own, someone who gives warmth when there is no blood connection. She paused, struggling to find the right words. Like a father, but more, because it is a choice, not a duty. Felt tears in his eyes. Tell him, tell them all, that I am honored and that I will always protect them, no matter what. From that day forward, the 12 cubs called their warm voice. They followed him everywhere. They learned his language. They played games with the human children in the colony. They laughed and sang and slowly, carefully, began to heal. 3 months passed like a dream. And then the fleet appeared in the sky, and the dream became a nightmare. The morning began like any other morning. The sun rose over the hills of New, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Birds sang in the trees. Children got ready for school. Farmers prepared for another day in the fields. Woke up early, as he always did. He made breakfast for the cubs, a mix of cooked meat and sweet fruits that they had come to love. He listened to them talk and laugh, mixing words with human words, creating their own strange, beautiful language. Was telling a joke. His human language had improved so much in 3 months. He still made mistakes, but now he could have real conversations. He could express ideas, feelings, hopes. He had told just the other day that he wanted to be a teacher too when he grew up. He wanted to help other children the way it helped him. Was drawing pictures. She had discovered art during her time with the humans and she loved it. Her drawings showed strange, wonderful things, and human children playing together, spaceships made of flowers, a tall figure with gentle eyes that she always labeled warm voice. The other cubs were playing a game they had invented, a mix of a hunting game and a human sport called soccer. They had spent weeks arguing about the rules, and they were still changing them every day. But that was part of the fun. Watched them and felt something warm in his chest. He had never had children of his own. He had always thought that was a sadness he would carry forever. But now, looking at these 12 strange, wonderful creatures who called him their warm voice, he understood that family was not about blood. Family was about choice. Then the sirens started screaming. Not the warning sirens they had heard before, the ones that meant possible danger, seek shelter. These were different. These were the emergency sirens, the ones that meant attack in progress, invasion imminent. The sky darkened, ran outside and looked up. The blue sky was filled with shapes, hundreds of them blocking out the sun, warships, a full invasion fleet. The cubs came out behind him. They looked up at the sky and their scales went pale with fear. They knew those ships. They knew what was coming. Warm voice whispered, "What do we do?" Pulled them all into his arms. 12 small bodies pressed against him, trembling with fear. "We stay together," he said. "No matter what happens, we stay together." The battle lasted 6 hours. The colony's defense force fought bravely. Captain Park led the ground troops, moving from position to position, organizing defenses, saving lives wherever she could. She had known for years. He had taught her nephew in school. He had helped her sister through a difficult time after her husband died. When the evacuation orders came, made sure and the cubs were on the priority list. "Get to the evacuation point," she told him through her communicator. Transport ships are leaving every 10 minutes. Take the cubs and go." "Some of them don't want to go," said. His voice was calm, but she could hear the fear underneath. "3 of them say they would rather stay with me than go back to the—" "Then take them with you, but you need to move now." The streets were chaos, people running everywhere, explosions in the distance, the terrible sound of weapons tearing through buildings, smoke and fire and screaming. Led his group through the chaos, 12 cubs and about 20 human children who had gathered around him during the evacuation. He knew these children too. He had taught most of them. They trusted him. They were almost at the evacuation point when the soldiers found them. 10 soldiers, tall and terrifying in their black combat armor. They had been searching the streets for human survivors. They had not expected to find their own cubs. The leader of the soldiers stopped, confused. He looked at the cubs, then at the human children, then at— "Cubs," he said "come now, we are here to rescue you." The 9 cubs who wanted to return home started to move forward, but a cub name did not move. They pressed closer too. "We stay with Warm Voice," said in. The soldier leader did not understand. "Warm Voice? What is this? There is no Warm Voice here, only humans, only enemies." "He is our Warm Voice," said. Her small voice was surprisingly strong. "He protected us, he healed us, he taught us. We choose him." The soldier's confusion turned to anger. "You have been corrupted. You are not thinking clearly. Come now, or we will take you by force." Did not understand every word, but he understood enough. He stepped forward, putting himself between the soldiers and the children, human and alike. "They are children," he said in broken. He had been studying the language, and now he was grateful for every hour of practice. "All children, please, let them be safe." The soldier leader looked at this strange human who spoke their language, who had their cubs clinging to him like he was their parent. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been doubt. Then Commander's voice came through the soldier's communicator. "Report, what is the delay?" The soldier leader's expression hardened. He had orders, he had a mission, and the mission did not include letting humans escape with cubs. "Kill the human," he ordered. "Take the cubs, all of them, the young humans too. They may be useful as hostages." The soldiers raised their weapons. Did not run. He did not beg. He simply stood there, his arms spread wide, shielding the children behind him with his body. "Close your eyes," he said softly to the children behind him. "Don't be afraid. Whatever happens, remember that you are loved, all of you, human, and you are all my children, and I love you." Captain Park arrived 30 seconds too late. She had heard the commotion and had come running with her squad. She arrived just in time to see the soldiers fire. She arrived just in time to see fall. She screamed with rage and opened fire. Her soldiers followed. The battle was quick and brutal. When it was over, all 10 soldiers were dead. But so was. Ran to his side. He was still breathing barely. His eyes found hers. "The children," he whispered. "They're safe," she said, tears streaming down her face. "They're all safe. You saved them." He smiled. It was the same gentle smile he always had, even now, even at the end. "Tell the cubs," he managed to say. "Tell them. I am proud of them. Tell them. Kindness is never wasted, even if. He did not finish the sentence. His eyes closed, his body relaxed, and just like that he was gone. The cubs crowded around him, keening with grief. Threw himself on his chest, wailing in a way that no child was supposed to wail. Sat beside him, holding his cooling hand, tears running down her scaled face. Wanted to grieve too, but there was no time. "We need to move," she said, her voice rough with unshed tears. "The evacuation ships are leaving. We need to go now." The 9 cubs who had wanted to return were collected by recovery teams in the chaos, and were carried onto the evacuation ship, still crying for their Warm Voice. The ship lifted off just as the colony fell completely. Stayed behind. Someone had to cover the evacuation. Someone had to fight until the very end. She had promised she would keep the children safe, and she would keep that promise even if it killed her. It did not kill her, but it did make her a prisoner. And now, in the darkness of the Iron Fang's prison cell, she carried his memory like a flame in her heart. His kindness, his courage, his absolute faith that love was stronger than hate. Tomorrow she would die. But she would die knowing that had been right. The seeds he had planted were still growing, and one day they would bloom into something beautiful. She was sure of it. The 12 cubs sat together in a large room in the Iron Fang. The room was cold and with metal walls and a hard floor. It was nothing like the warm, colorful spaces they had known on New, but they were together, and that was something. 3 days had passed since they were brought back to the fleet. 3 days since they learned that their warm voice was dead. Sat in the corner, staring at nothing. He had not eaten since they came aboard. His scales had turned a dull, sickly color, the sign of deep grief. He kept touching his chest, where a small piece of cloth was hidden under his scales. It was a piece of shirt torn off during the chaos of the battle. Had kept it with him. He would never let it go. Was trying to be strong for the younger cubs. She organized games, told stories, tried to keep them calm. But at night, when she thought no one was watching, she cried quietly into her claws. She missed warm voice. She missed the school, the other children, the taste of sweet fruits in the morning, the sound of human music floating through the windows. The other cubs were confused. Some of them were glad to be back with their own kind. They had missed their parents, their friends, their familiar food and language, but even they felt strange. The way of doing things which had once seemed normal now seemed harsh and cold. They had seen another way. They could not unsee it. On the morning of the 4th day, soldiers came for them. "You are summoned to the central chamber," the lead soldier said. His voice was hard and showed no emotion. "Commander wishes to address you." The cubs were marched through the long corridors of the warship. Others watched them pass. Some looked curious. Some looked disgusted. Word had spread about the cubs who had lived with humans, who had been corrupted by enemy kindness. The central chamber was a huge circular room with high ceilings. It was used for important ceremonies, for trials, for executions. Today, it was filled with officers of all ranks. They stood in rows around the edges of the room, their eyes fixed on the cubs as they entered. In the center of the room, on her knees in chains, was Captain Park. The cubs recognized her immediately. She was Warm Voice's friend. She was the one who had protected them during the escape, who had fought the soldiers who killed their teacher, remembered her crying over Warm Voice's body, remembered her gentle hands guiding them onto the evacuation ship. Looked terrible. Her face was bruised and swollen. Blood had dried on her uniform, but when she saw the cubs, she tried to smile. It was a weak smile, full of pain, but it was real. Commander stood beside her, his copper scales gleaming under the bright lights. He waited until the cubs were lined up before him, then raised his voice so everyone in the chamber could hear. "Fellow warriors," he began, "we have won a great victory. The human colony of New has fallen. Their soldiers are dead or captured. Their people are scattered. Another world has been cleansed of human corruption." The officers made sounds of approval. Claws clicked against armor. Tails thumped against the floor. "But," continued, his voice growing darker, "our victory is not complete. These 12 cubs were held by the humans for 3 months. During that time, they were subjected to enemy manipulation. They were taught to trust humans, to like humans, to prefer humans over their own kind." He pointed at the cubs, and several of the officers hissed with anger. "This is a sickness," said, "a corruption of blood and spirit, and like all sickness, it must be burned out." He walked toward the cubs, his heavy footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. He stopped in front of, looking down at the young with cold eyes. "I knew your father," said. "He was a great warrior, a hero of our people. He died in battle when you were very young. What would he think if he could see you now, crying for humans, wearing human cloth against your scales? His claws trembled, but he said nothing. Turned to address the whole group. I am not cruel. I do not wish to punish children for the crimes of their captors, but I must know that you are true. I must see proof that this human sickness has not taken root in your hearts. He gestured to. This human is responsible for the death of many soldiers. She has been sentenced to death, but I have decided that she will not die by a warrior's blade. That would be too great an honor for such prey. He looked at the cubs, one by one. You will kill her together. You will tear her apart with your claws, the way our ancestors tore apart their prey. You will prove that you are true, that human kindness has not made you weak. The chamber fell completely silent. The officers watched, closed her eyes. The cubs stood frozen, unable to move or speak. His mind was racing. He remembered everything Warm Voice had taught him, about kindness, about choice, about what it meant to be truly strong. Warm Voice had told him a story once, about a human who refused to fight even when people wanted to hurt him. The human said that true courage was not in the ability to hurt others, but in the strength to choose not to hurt, even when you could. Sometimes, Warm Voice had said, the bravest thing you can do is refuse to be what others expect you to be. Looked at, she was Warm Voice's friend. She had tried to save him. She had been kind to the cubs during the evacuation, even though she was scared and hurt and fighting for her life. She was not an enemy, she was family. His patience was running out. He raised his voice, making it a command that echoed off the metal walls. Attack the human. Now, show the Empire that you are true. The officers leaned forward, expecting blood. This was how their people had always been. The strong destroyed the weak. The young proved themselves through violence. This was the natural order. Looked at. Something passed between them, a silent understanding. Warm Voice had given them something more than food and shelter. He had given them a choice. He had shown them that they could be different. They could be better. They could be who protected instead of destroyed. They could be worthy of being his children. Took a deep breath. His scales shifted color from dull to deep, determined green. He looked at Commander, and for the first time he spoke in a voice that did not tremble. We are true, he said, but we have learned what that really means. It does not mean blind obedience. It does not mean cruelty. It means strength. And the strongest thing we can do is choose our own path. His eyes widened with rage. You dare to refuse a direct command? Yes, said simply, we dare. He turned to his fellow cubs, and he saw the same fire in their eyes. Even the ones who had been glad to return, even the ones who had tried to forget what they learned on knew, they understood now. They remembered Warm Voice's stories, his songs, his gentle hands, and his endless patience. They remembered what it felt like to be truly loved. Nodded once, and the 12 cubs moved as one. But they did not move toward to attack. They moved toward to protect. The 12 cubs lunged forward as one body, moving faster than anyone expected. Officers nodded with grim satisfaction. His mouth curved into a pleased smile. This was how it should be. The corruption would be cleansed in blood. Then the cubs surrounded. Not to attack, to protect. They formed a tight circle around her, their backs to her, their claws extended outward toward the watching crowd. 12 small bodies creating a living wall between the chained human and everyone who wanted to harm her. The chamber went silent. Every officer, every soldier, every commander stood frozen in shock. This had never happened before. In all the long history of the Empire, no cubs had ever refused a direct command. No children had ever protected an enemy with their own bodies. Commander's satisfied smile melted into confusion, then rage. His scales darkened to an angry red color. His claws scraped against the metal floor as he took a step forward. What is this? He demanded. What are you doing? stood at the front of the protective circle, facing directly. He was small compared to the massive commander, barely reaching his waist, but he did not look afraid. "We are being true," said. His voice was clear and strong, filling the silent chamber. "Our warm voice taught us what strength really means. It does not mean conquest. It does not mean cruelty. It means choosing to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Your warm voice was a human spat, an enemy, a piece of prey. "He was more honorable than any warrior I have ever known," said, stepping up beside. Her blue scales caught the light and her eyes were wet but unafraid. "He died protecting children, our kind and his kind together. He did not see enemies or friends. He only saw children who needed protection." Tail lashed back and forth. "He poisoned your minds. This is exactly what I warned you about. You have become weak, human-touched, corrupted." "No," said the third cub who had tried to stay with. "We have become stronger. We have learned that there is more than one way to be powerful." Warm Voice had no weapons, no claws, no armor, but he was the bravest person we ever met. Turned to the gathered officers, spreading his arms wide. "You see, this is what happens when we show mercy to humans. They poison our young. They turn them against their own people. This is why we must destroy them all completely forever." But the officers did not respond the way he expected. Some of them were nodding, yes, agreeing with his words. But others were looking at the cubs with strange expressions. They were looking at the small creatures who stood ready to die for an enemy prisoner, and they were thinking. A young officer near the front spoke up. His name was, and he had fought in many battles. "Commander, these are the children of admirals and generals. They are from the best bloodlines of our people. If they are all saying the same thing, perhaps we should listen." "Silence," roared. "I will not take advice from a junior officer about the nature of honor." But did not fall silent. He took a step forward and his voice remained steady. "My own sister is among those cubs. She wrote to me while she was with the humans. She told me about their teacher, about how he cared for them, about how he healed the sick and taught the curious. She said she had never felt so safe, even though she was among enemies." "Your sister has been corrupted," said, "as you are apparently being corrupted now." "Or perhaps," said quietly, "we are finally seeing clearly." The tension in the room was like electricity. Looked around at his officers, trying to find support. Many still stood with him, their faces hard and loyal, but too many others looked uncertain. The cubs had planted a seed of doubt. Inside the protective circle was crying silently. She understood what was happening, even though she could not follow every word. These children, these beautiful, brave children, were risking everything to save her. Would have been so proud. "You stupid kids," she whispered. "You beautiful, stupid kids." Glanced back at her, and for a moment his alien face softened. "Warm Voice taught us a word," he said in broken but understandable human speech. "Family. It does not require shared blood. It is a choice." He turned back to face. "We choose our family today. This human is our family. Warm Voice was our family, and we will protect our family with our lives." Drew his weapon, a long curved blade that had killed many enemies. "Then you will die with her, all of you. I will personally tell your parents that their children were lost to human corruption." "You will tell them nothing," said a new voice. Everyone turned. A very old had stepped forward from the crowd of officers. He was ancient, his scales faded to a pale, his movements slow and careful. But his eyes were sharp, and when he spoke, everyone listened. He was High Elder, one of the most respected members of the governing council. He had fought in wars before was born. His words carried the weight of generations. "I have watched these cubs since they returned," said slowly. "I have seen how they carry themselves. I have seen the grief they feel for their human protector, and I have seen something in them that I have not seen in our young for many generations." "And what is that?" asked, his voice dripping with contempt. "Honor," said simply. "True honor, not the honor of killing weaker prey, not the honor of following orders without thought, but the honor of choosing what is right even when it costs everything. He walked slowly toward the cubs, his ancient feet shuffling on the metal floor. The crowd parted before him. "I have conquered many worlds," continued. "I have killed more enemies than I can count, and for many years I thought that was strength, but watching these cubs, I am beginning to wonder if I was wrong." He reached the protective circle and looked down at the 12 young, who stood ready to die for a human prisoner. "The humans have something we do not have," he said. "They care for children who are not their own. They heal enemies instead of killing them. They plant seeds of kindness that grow even in the darkest places." He looked at, meeting the young cub's eyes. "They planted those seeds in you, and now you bloom." His face twisted with fury. "This is treason. You are speaking treason against the Empire." "No," said calmly, "I am speaking truth, and the truth is that these cubs are showing us a better way, a harder way, a way that requires more courage than any battle." He turned to address the whole chamber. "I am calling for a vote. The execution will be stopped. This human will be returned to her people, and we will begin talks with the humans about peace." The chamber exploded into chaos. Officers shouted at each other. Some drew weapons. Others called for calm. In the confusion, more moved toward the cubs, forming a second protective ring around them. Was among them. So were others, young officers and old veterans alike, all of them looking at the cubs and seeing something worth protecting. Saw his authority crumbling. He raised his blade, ready to strike, to end this madness with blood. But before he could move, 12 sets of young claws caught the light. The cubs stood firm, ready to fight, ready to die. And behind them, growing larger every moment, stood a crowd of their own people who had finally understood what the humans had known all along. Kindness was not weakness. Love was not corruption. And the strongest power in the universe was not the ability to destroy, but the courage to protect. Commander looked at the wall of opposition before him. He saw his future ending. He saw everything he believed in crumbling. And for the first time in his long, bloody career, he felt fear. Not fear of death, fear that he had been wrong. Fear that his whole life, all his conquests and kills, had been built on a lie. He lowered his blade. The vote was taken that night. It was close, very close, but the reformers won by 3 votes, was released into neutral territory. Peace talks began. The war continued for 7 more years, but it was a different kind of war. More and more began to question the old ways. The cubs, who grew into adults, led the reform movement, became a leader of his people, became a diplomat. All 12 of them carried teachings into the future. When the peace treaty was finally signed, it included a section called the Warm Voice Accords. It guaranteed the protection of all children during conflict, regardless of species. It was the first of its kind in galactic history. On the anniversary of the treaty, Admiral Park stood beside at a memorial on rebuilt New. The statue showed a human man kneeling, his arms around children of 2 different species. The inscription read, "Lee Teacher." He believed that kindness was the strongest weapon of all. He was right. Placed a flower at the base of the statue. It was a morning flower mixed with human roses. "He would have been proud of you," said softly. "I still hear his voice," replied. "In my dreams he is still teaching. He will always be teaching." Behind them, children of both species played together in the memorial garden. The sound of their laughter filled the air, a sound that would have loved. The galaxy had learned what one gentle teacher had always known. Kindness was never wasted. And love truly given never dies.